Hey everybody, I'm Jim Perkins of the Capital City Condors, and this is the Wally and Methot Show. Here are your hosts, Brent Wallace and Mark Methot.
Hello everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Brent Wallace, he's Mark Methot, and of course a special thank you to Jim Perkins who voiced the intro for us today. Jim is the president of the Capital City Condors, a program Mark knows very well. The Condors program helps get players on the ice who otherwise wouldn't play hockey due to physical or cognitive disabilities. So a special thank you to Jim Perkins and all the volunteers at the Capital City Condors. You can go visit their website, capitalcitycondors.org. Mark, you know, like, and I will say, like, Mark Borvietsky, Kyle Turris, Matt Karkner, and their wives, all big supporters of the Condors program. And really, players give back to the community a lot more than perhaps we know of. Do you, as players, understand how important it is for you guys to get involved?
I think most guys do. You know, starting off, you're so focused when you're coming out of junior, on your game, and you kind of forget all the extracurriculars and all the charitable work the teams do. And then as you get started and you get into it, in my case, I think the most significant kind of visits that we would do were always at CHEO. And even in Dallas or Columbus, we'd go to visit all the sick kids at the hospital through their programs. And it's hard to put into words what you feel doing those things. But for me personally, I know even the parents, you know, you can see a lot of them are exhausted and they're there. And then all of a sudden we kind of roll in, and some of them happen to be hockey fans, and you can sign some autographs and just talk to them. Just having normal, candid conversations. You can really see the joy on their faces just through those little subtle conversations with them and their kids. And I think as players, it's a great responsibility to have because it's very rewarding, and you just feel good doing it. You feel good being able to help people out in the smallest way possible. And in some cases, they may not have a clue who you are, but in most cases, it's enjoyable and very rewarding.
Well, the one thing I do know is that a lot of players will go do things completely unannounced, and they do it away from the cameras and all that stuff. Like even for you, I know like you would go and visit children's hospitals when you were playing in Columbus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And not just, I'd go read books for the kids. I don't know how I was able to get through a whole book, but I managed. But all jokes aside, we'd go to like a library, and I was on my own, and I'd go out there, and these were all sort of some of the programs that the teams had at the time. And I enjoyed it. It was fun. And, you know, most of the kids have no idea who you are, but it's more, I think the parents might have a better idea and understanding, and it just gets you out there and involved. And you're able to give back instead of sitting at home and watching television all day long. So it's beneficial for everybody. And again, as a player, you just feel good about yourself doing it, and you're able to make some people happy.
And it is important and rewarding. And so we appreciate all the players who take their time out and go and try and help out community causes and charity causes in the organization. All right, let's move on to the show today. Big show. We complete the series of our Ottawa Senator captains, as we have Toronto Maple Leaf and former Ottawa Senator captain Jason Spezza on the show. Also, Sportsnet's Kyle Bukauskas stops by to chat about the art of the post-game interview. And as always, trivial trivia at the end of the show. But first, as always, let's get to the headlines. Number one, backed up. No, we're not talking about Mark eating cheese curds, but instead Sens injury woes in goal. Number two, if I had $9 million, I'm going to make Mark the Sens GM and give him $9 million to see how he'd spend it to improve the Senators. Ready to rumble? Let's go back and look at that Matthew Tkachuk fight with Justin Hall from the other night and exactly what happened. Cup pretenders. It wasn't that long ago, Mark said that the Toronto Maple Leafs were his favorite in the North Division. Is it still that way now? And Let Me Be Your Hero, not just a great song by Enrique Iglesias, but a fantastic way to ask who your favorite player was growing up. All right, Mark, let's start with number one. That's backed up. The Sens have a number of issues in goal. Matt Murray out week to week. Joey Daccord likely done for the season. Marcus Hogberg, he's not close to returning just yet. So now they've got Philip Gustafsson, who made his first NHL start, and Anton Forsberg, who hasn't played in the NHL since March 28, 2020. It looks like he'll get the start on Monday. How do you assess the goaltending around the Ottawa Senators? And I just want to add, on Sunday, head coach DJ Smith with the quote of asking about whether or not Philip Gustafsson would get the start on Monday and get his second start. And he said, you can't develop everybody. It's the goalie that gives you the best chance to win at this point. That doesn't sound like there's a lot of, is it faith in Gustafsson, or do they just want to see what they've gotten Anton Forsberg, who they claimed off waivers?
I think, yeah, it's odd, right? And you and I were speaking about this earlier. I can't really figure it out. I think I would like to see what's going on in practice. There might be something there where maybe Gus has had some tough practices and they're not really confident in him. So they figure, oh, let's just put Forsberg in. But again, their goaltender woes right now are something that no team ever wants to experience.
Yeah.
But I think I'd be more concerned if this was, again, and I always go back to this, I sound like a broken record. I'd be more concerned if this was an issue where you had a playoff team and you're on your fourth goaltender. Right now, I think we're lucky enough with the Ottawa Senators in that they're lucky enough and fortunate that they don't have to really worry about winning a whole lot of games right now. So I find that curious with the comments regarding Gustafsson. If it was me, I really like the way he finished off and came in the other night. Ideally, yes, I think your situation is okay if Murray can kind of find his consistency and Decord comes in as a good backup. Unfortunately, we all know what happened there. They're both out. Decord probably out for the rest of the year. So it's survival mode right now, man. I don't know how you solve this. I guess you go with the hot hand and see who can deliver.
All right. So players always say we have complete faith in all our goalies and they'll name every goalie in the system. But the reality is if your number one goalie isn't in the net, what mindset is this? Now, let's just take that to another level and you're down to the fourth and fifth guy in your system. How are you as players play that game mentally?
Well, when your top guy goes down, I find it's a collective response from the team that you're just going to play better defensively. And sometimes it's almost subconscious. You're not even really talking about it prior to the game. It's just, your starter's not playing behind you right now. Your backup's in there. You have to provide for him and provide a lot of support. And you just do it and you find success. Now, when your top two goaltenders are out and your third goaltender might even be injured and or a fourth is coming in, I don't know what the answer is. I've never had to go through anything like that. So I don't know. I mean, maybe you pull the goalie and you play 6 attackers all game. I don't know, but all jokes aside, I think at this point, I think collectively you'll naturally respond with a better defensive game overall. But again, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on these guys right now, being that you've got some guys that are very questionable between your goalposts right now.
Yeah. One other question, and it's just while we're on the topic of goaltending, is in warm-up, do you shoot harder on the backup goalie than you do on the starter?
100%. And I was always very respectful because I'm not a goal scorer. And that's no secret. I know I'm stating the obvious, but you do have forwards out there that like to go shelf and they like to go hard and they wait. They're licking their chops until your backup goes in and your starter's already off the ice. So I think in this case, I think there's a collective agreement prior to the game that everyone keeps the shots down nice and low. And you don't have to worry about calling in a Zamboni driver to come in and play for you.
All right, let's move on to number 2. If I had $9 million, okay, here we go. Here's the rules. You get $9 million to improve the Ottawa Senators. The only thing is they have to be UFAs at the end of the season. How do you spend your money?
Okay, that's a challenging question for me because you have to know all your ins and outs as far as the business goes, all your prospects and how the organization is structured. I'm not that guy right now. I just give you the eye test version of what I believe to be true.
That's okay. We know what they need. They need some help.
I know. So yeah. So that leads me into my answer. You need a top 4 D-man. So if you look around and you and I were discussing this, you look at the UFA, the UFA list going into this summer right now, right off the bat, it's not very deep, right? So you've got $9 million. What do you do? If I'm the GM, I'm addressing that immediately, and I'm getting a top 4 guy. I'd like a guy like David Savard, Adam Larson, a reliable guy who isn't necessarily in his 30s yet, still has a little bit of juice left in his career, but can provide a top 4 role. And it's not necessarily a guy that has to. I know you emphasize this, Wally, a guy that has to be a right-handed shot. I don't care. I think you just find a top 4 guy that can complement our decor, which isn't very hard to do right now, and that still is reasonably youthful. I like those 2 players as options or somewhere along those lines, and I'll just stay at that. I'm not even worried about the forward group right now. I know there's leeway. You have $9 million, but I'm not even going to go that far. I think you just focus on your decor and build from there.
You continue to be frugal. It amazes me even with this one. So
even through free agency, I know.
Yeah, this is amazing. All right, so I had David Savard on my list because I think they need someone to play with Thomas Chabot. So I look for a right-handed shot defenseman who's also got some size. So
Okay.
David Savard is $4.25 million. He's obviously going to get a raise, but let's just stay with what he's making. Or Neil Pionk, but he's on the smaller side. He's only 6 foot. But the big fish would be Jeff Petrie. I'd love to see, obviously, Jeff Petrie. He's
Get it out of your
33
head.
though, right?
Not going to happen.
I know, but this is just play with the game for now. And
I
then
know.
So with you being cheap, I spent some more money and then went up front. I think they still need to address their center spot and perhaps like a number one center, but they're not really going to get that without paying like $9 million.
Well, so you're going to overpay for everybody, like exponentially, and certainly coming to Ottawa on a rebuild. I'm just saying, and people love to tiptoe around this, and it's a as far as the location goes, it's not ideal, and the tax rate sucks. So as a free agent, because I'm speaking from experience, players are looking at that. I'm just saying. No question. And it all factors in, but just for this little exercise, I'm just going to go with the salary. I'm going to add either Adam Lowry from Winnipeg, good size. I like that. Yeah. And he's only at 3 million, a little less. And then, or Philip Deneau, who's also good to, like, if they ever get that top number one, like Josh Norris, they can move Deneau to a second line type center. Sure. Like, if it's not Tim Stutz, they'll move him over. So that's what I'm going to just take all the good players out of Montreal and Jeff Petrie and Philip Deneau, and I'm going to put them in my roster and we're set. Yeah, I don't mind that. I love that idea that you'd bring in a centerman, at least like a top 2 and a top 4 D-man, but it's easy to say this. It's another thing to go out there and find them and get them at a reasonable price. Because we all know how free agency rolls, right? You get a guy, he comes in, he's overpaid. Everyone starts bitching about the contract in 2 seasons. It's just how it works. Yep. And with $21 million still on the cap, they're not likely to be spending $9 million anytime soon, but it's just a fun exercise. All right, let's move on to Ready to Rumble. So I think it was Friday night. Matthew Tkachuk and Justin Hall of the Leafs and Matthew Tkachuk of the Flames looked like they're about to drop the gloves, looked like they're going to dance off. And then Hall goes to pick up his glove and then Tkachuk starts a fight. Can you just take me through whatever transpired? And in your mind as a hockey player, is this a dirty move by Matthew Tkachuk, or does Justin Hall not understand? This was only, by the way, Justin Hall's second NHL fight. Yeah. Well, I thought Hall handled himself really well. And I don't like that guys have to fight after a clean hit. He landed a really clean hit on Gaudreau, and then you have to answer the bell for some reason because it was a clean open ice hit. But that seems to be the way the culture in hockey's gone now, and there's no way around it. But I watched their post-game interviews, and just based off of watching the way it all transpired, it just looked like miscommunication between them all. And Hall mentioned a really interesting point. I think one of the refs said something to him as Tkachuk was leaving. And so I think he just believed, okay, we're not going to fight anymore, and was going to go pick up his glove. And then Tkachuk rolls back around and decides to fight. So I think for whatever reason, Tkachuk kind of skated away. And I think it was just a collage of miscues that led up to that weird sequence. But the fight was great. So there's no complaints there. If Matthew Tkachuk isn't Matthew Tkachuk, does anybody really have a problem with what happened? Exactly. That's a great point, Wally. It's a non-conversation. It's a non-issue at that point. So again, he's a polarizing player. He's the kind of guy any team would love to have in their lineup, obviously. And but in the end, what I liked and what makes this sort of a non-issue is that it was a great fight. They both handled each other really well. And I think even Wayne Simmons had some really good comments on it after the game, said it worked out well and it fired up the team. All right, let's move on then to Cup pretenders. It wasn't that long ago that you said the Toronto Maple Leafs were your favorite in the North to win the Stanley Cup, and there'd be a parade on Yonge, and you'd be right there waving your big blue foam finger. I did. Is that still the case? They did get a win here on Saturday, but they're not exactly tearing up the league anymore. Yeah, I absolutely had them pegged as my favorite. I'll own that. I know it was a contentious issue among our fan base here in Ottawa, but and I've been trolling the Toronto fans a little lately too, but that's all in good fun. It doesn't mean that they're not a good hockey club. But anyway, I really like the club. I've had this discussion with some Leaf fans as well, and we kind of go back and forth about it. I think for me right now, I'm really reluctant to pick them as a favorite only because of the series I saw with them in Winnipeg. To me, they're missing a huge key piece, and it's goaltending. The consistency or lack thereof right now in Toronto between the pipes is really concerning. You watch Winnipeg right now, Hellebuck can come in and steal a game. You need that going into the postseason. It's just the way it is, right? You've seen it with when I played with the Ottawa Senators with our goaltending and Craig Anderson. I mean, you need a guy, no matter how great your team is in front of the goaltender, you still need that guy to be your best player. And right now, Freddie Anderson is not their best player. So I know there's some rumblings there. I don't know what Dubas is going to do at the trade deadline. My feel is that they're just going to have to move forward with him and deal with it. And their forward group's fantastic. I love their additions that they made up front. Their decore's pretty good. They're consistent. They're hard to play against. They move the puck pretty well. It's just their goaltending, and that's their only issue. So how do you address it now, mid-season, going into the trade deadline with quarantine in effect? I don't know, because you got that 14-day rule now with players on trades. And I mean, goaltending isn't exactly something you can just find like that around the NHL. So you tell me, Wally.
Did they find it though in Jack Campbell? Is he going to perhaps
start,
we're only talking 4 games here, but he's 4-0.
I know it's a small sample size, but yeah, you have no choice, right? And if you're going to commit to him, then you're immediately putting Freddie as your second, as your backup. You might upset the guy doing that moving forward. You go with Jack, and maybe he isn't in fact your horse after a couple of weeks when you realize that he might not be ready for that workload. I don't know. And I guess the best thing to do now is just wait. Time will tell, but there's no clear answer other than I believe they do have a very good hockey club. It's just their goaltending.
All right. Okay. Finally, number 5. Let me be your hero. No, not me. I just thought it was a catchy title. So how about,
I like it.
Who was your favorite player growing up? Now, I will say you were born before the Senators were. So did you when did you become a Senators fan, or were you ever?
I became a Senators fan, I want to say when I was around 10, probably, right? I don't know, Wally, if you remember those old school kind of throw over starter jackets. Do you guys remember those where they didn't have it was just a short zipper, you had to pull it over like a winter coat? Mine was the Senators one. But my favorite team growing up was Boston because of Ray Bourque. And funny, we talk about this, when I was in grade 5, I had to do a school project on Ray Bourque. You had to pick something you wanted to talk about. He happened to be the no-brainer for me. So I write out, and it was a beautifully well done, in my opinion at the time, project in French school. Might I add, it was at a very strict Catholic French school here in Ottawa. I dropped this project, a nice little write-up about how great Ray Bourque was. And I printed out a bunch of pictures and I sent it into the Boston Bruins, after I presented it to my class. So it's all in its original pieces and forms. So the original copy, I sent it into the Boston Bruins in hopes that he'll send it back to me with an autograph. And Ray Bourque gave me the cold shoulder. And I still remember it to this day. I still love the guy, still have all his rookie cards. And this is not me trying to slander Ray Bourque, but it left a hole here, and I still have tough feelings about that.
How did you not just move on and go, I'm done with you, Ray Bourque?
I think I made a comment on it about 10 years ago on Twitter when it first came out. I tried to hint it towards him that it happened in hopes that he'd send something to me or something. And I still follow him on Twitter. I'm almost like a little fan, but to no avail, nothing came by. So here we are.
I don't think you're getting that project back. All right. I grew up in Fredericton, New Brunswick, so there wasn't an NHL team but the Habs and the Bruins and Leafs were always on. But for my formative years, the New York Islanders were always on because they were winning Stanley Cups. So I named all my stuffed animals after the New York Islanders. So I had a little blue baseball, or I had a little manager, and so he was like a bear or something. But I named him Al Arbor because he was the baseball manager. And I had a big blue dog, and the big blue dog was Billy Smith. And so when I was a goalie, I had a black Coho goalie stick because that was Billy Smith's Coho goalie stick. So I cheered for the New York Islanders. That's nice. I hated Wayne Gretzky because I always thought Mike Bossy was a better player than Wayne Gretzky. I slightly wrong, but he was a great
just a little, yeah, but a great goal scorer. Yeah, I'm not hating on Mike Bossy.
Seasons. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good.
Speaking of great goal scorers, that's Jason Spezza. He's coming up in the show. Still to come. Of course, we're going to talk to him about lots of different things, including his switch from wood sticks to composite and how difficult that was for him. Also, don't forget Kyle Bukauskas is still to come. And of course, we're going to hand out more signed Mark Methot photos. Everybody's dream. Stay with us. You're watching the Wally and Methot show. Welcome back to the show. Pleased to be joined now by one of the greatest Ottawa Senators of all time and one of the greatest offensive threats of his generation, Jason Spezza, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Spets, I got one question right off the top. You recently lost to the Ottawa Senators in Ottawa. Do you hate losing to the Ottawa Senators?
I hate losing, but yeah, definitely. I don't know. It's not fun to lose to anyone. I think the emotional attachment, the guys are different than the guys I played with. So it doesn't sting like maybe it did when I first left. But no, you don't like losing any games.
You have 3 goals and 4 assists and 7 points, I think, against Ottawa in 17 games or something. Do you wish you would score more against them, or does it really matter?
I wish I would score more in general, but my role has changed, and this isn't early days Jason Spezza where I'm playing 20 minutes. So I think the lack of production against the Sens is more just a different role, different age, different time of my career, more so than playing the Sens.
Spez, before Wally cut me off there, I was going to ask you, what's the dynamic like in the room? Like, I guess more for the fans out here that don't really understand what's going on when the team might be struggling a little bit. Just give people a little bit of an insight on kind of the discussions that are going on in the room right now and what's the attitude like. I know you guys have had a bit of a skid, so if you could just touch on that.
Yeah, the attitude's actually great. We're actually in a period right now where we have 2 days off just to reset. We went through a tough stretch of the schedule. We traveled back home from Vancouver and then had to play 4 games. So we needed a little bit of a break. So it came at the right time. But I think that's why you bring in veteran players, adding the guys that we have. There's a sense of calm. We know that we haven't played our best hockey, but in this league, it's never as good as you think it is when you're winning, and never as bad as you think it is when you're losing. So the good news is we have a recipe, what works for us. We know what it feels like when we're playing good and playing our game, and we feel like we can get back to that. So there's definitely no sense of panic, but you don't like losing games, and it creates a little more tension around the rink.
And they were like, I read some stuff online, something I'm not typically used to doing, but now that I'm on the media side, I got to pay attention to all that. A lot of people were criticizing the day of travel. Was there any discussion about that prior? Because I'm sure that was a bit of a topic there after the game.
Yeah, no, they consulted with kind of the leadership group we have, and we decided to go ahead with it and to try it out. I think, some guys liked it, some guys didn't. It's one of those things where you can't, you have to try things to see if you like them or not. And other sports have used it. That's not why we lost the game by no means. So
for sure.
I think guys actually felt pretty good for coming off. We were on our 4th game. We didn't come out great, and that hurt us. And in this league, you can't play from behind. It's just really hard to play from behind, especially with all the games.
You talk about leadership. You've been a captain here in Ottawa. You learned from Alfredson, I'm assuming, when you first started. What did he impart anything on you, or what is your leadership style as you're in Toronto now?
Yeah, I think Alfie imparted just daily work ethic. I think he was an everyday guy. Very competitive, but put the work in, and always took care of himself. Showed up to camp every year in great shape. Was one of the fittest guys on the team. And there's lots of guys, Chris Phillips, Wade Redden, Chris Kelly. We had lots of great leaders, through the years there that I got to take little bits from. In terms of my leadership style now, I think it's important that you are accessible for your teammates. You get to know guys. And then I have to bring it every day. I think that for me, it's practicing hard, showing guys that, those are important aspects of being a good pro, and also just being, focused on winning hockey games. And I think that when your top older guys are focused on winning games, it trickles through on your team, and everybody has success. But for me, it's just kind of being an everyday guy, similar to how Alfie was, and also then understanding the room and knowing when guys need to be talked to a little bit.
Yeah, Spez, we're going to ask you this later, but now's a good opportunity. What's the secret to just that youthfulness that you're found right now in your game? We're watching you skate. At least I've been paying attention a little bit, and I'm familiar with playing with you. Your stride looks amazing. So what's changed now with that age? I can barely skate at this point, so I can only imagine what it's like playing up to closer to 40. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think I'm probably skating as well as I have in 4 years. I think the long off season, as much as it was difficult, I think really helped me. I was able to, during the first pause, I did a lot of slower strength movements to try to get my body feeling right. And then we played 5 games only in the bubble. And then I had this other huge off season. So I took that off season and I went into like a track program almost with the team here, where we did lots of running, tempo runs, sprint stuff, shuttle runs, stuff that I haven't done. And I haven't ran in years because my body, with the shorter off seasons, my body hasn't been able to do the priming to get ready for that. So I just really benefited, I think, from the long off season and putting the work in.
Were you ever concerned of all this time off maybe shortening your career, like that you may not be able to come back the same way you were?
No, I felt the opposite about it, to be honest. I knew that my edge on everybody else is that I don't mind the work every day. And I feel like that was going to help me. I think a tough thing for guys during a period when you go through such little hockey is the motivation. And that's never been my issue. So I actually felt like I could use this as an advantage to try to kind of get a leg up and to get feeling really good. And, luckily for me, it's worked out where I feel good and I feel like I've made some strides. So kind of went according to plan that way.
Okay. So you're the 6th oldest skater in the National Hockey League this year, but you're not even the oldest on your team. So does playing with Joe Thornton make you feel young?
For sure. Yeah. It's, definitely when you have a guy at his age, putting the work in and playing as well as he is, it definitely makes you feel like there's more, runway left. So I think it definitely helps to have him around for me.
Vintage Spets scoring a hat trick this year, your 7th. What was it like for you personally and I don't know if you ever valued a hat trick that much, but what was it like to get that at 37?
Well, everybody likes getting hat tricks. I can't say I expected to have another one at this point in my career, just with the role I'm in, and just one of those nights where the puck was following me, and you kind of start getting into that flow and feeling it, and things went well. So definitely something I'll look back at, I'm sure, at some point and be proud of. But in the moment, you just kind of keep moving forward.
Okay, I'm going to follow on this path for just a second, Meth. Sorry. You scored that hat trick in 12 minutes and 17 seconds. It was a pretty good night. But I want to go back to your first NHL hat trick. You had 6 points against the Montreal Canadiens in 13 minutes and 37 seconds in a 6-1 win. You scored a point in almost every third shift. So can you take us through that night?
Yeah, that was a little bit of luck over anything with the goals. I think, if I recall, like the assists were good plays. The goals were like tips. One was on the goal line that I tapped in, and I forget the third goal, but it's just one of those nights where everything's going your way. And I think we were running the score up, so we stopped playing, or else it probably would have been a bigger night, because it's just one of those nights. And sometimes it's unexplainable, and you go home and you wonder what even happened.
It took you 295 games, I think it was, to get your first NHL hat trick, and that was that night. So were you starting to wonder if you were ever going to get that one or not, because you were such an offensive threat, obviously?
No, I was a pass first guy. I never, hat tricks are something that, I don't know, you need a little bit of luck. I think I've had a couple of hat tricks with empty netters. I don't know. I was a pass first guy. I was never really at the forefront of my mind, but it's definitely something you enjoy doing. But I don't know. It wasn't something I lost a lot of sleep over.
I get one more thing about Montreal, and that is, so it happened the other night. I don't know if you saw the Ottawa highlights, where it looked like Colin White threw a puck up into the slot blindly onto Tanner Pearson's stick. It looks like somebody called for it. It always reminds me of the play behind the net when you called for Sheldon Surrey to pass you the puck. And I'm sure you remember this as clear as day. So do players still do, well, I guess they still do it, but how often do players get away with doing this?
Yeah, you do try to do it sometimes. It only works 1 out of 100 times you call for it. I saw the White one. I think there's probably a defenseman or someone in the middle that was supposed to be the pop guy that he thought was their teammate, not the other guy. But for me, maybe one of the worst mistakes I made was calling for that reverse on Shelley, because he made it his personal vendetta to get me after that at all times. So
such a greasy play. Oh.
Yeah, and he's a big guy, but boy, was I happy about it at the time, because I didn't like those guys, and they were a hard team for us to play against. So I had the highlight against them earlier in my career, and then I called for the reverse, and He made me pay for it.
Did you know he was coming for you every shift?
Oh yeah. Back in those days, I could look at the lineup every night and figure out which one or two guys was going to try to make it hard on me. So for sure, the coach in the other room was saying, let's be hard on this guy, make it hard on him. So I was ready for it.
Did you ever talk to Sheldon afterwards or after his career?
I didn't. I'm scared of him. So I probably would.
Yeah, he's a terrifying dude. I know.
He's actually a great
imagine.
guy. Like, I've met him a few times. He was really nice to me, but I don't know if it was before that or after, because I don't know. He's a big man. So I've heard great things about him though.
Let's go. One more thing, and that's back to you own a few Ottawa Senator franchise records, most assists in a season, most points in a period. But you hold one record that most people aren't aware of. And of course, that's the March 5th game against Philadelphia. You have 35 penalty minutes. You hold most penalty minutes for the Ottawa Senators in a game and in a period. Can you describe that game for us in like 20 seconds?
Yeah, it was absolute mayhem. We were getting blown out, and then the fights started, and it was wave after wave of fights. And I remember looking on the bench, and there was maybe 6 or 7 guys on the bench, and I was one of them. And I was like, I'm not going to be one of the only guys not fighting here today. So the refs came over, and they said, you know, if anybody else fights, we're kicking you out of the game. You're getting a triple game misconduct, which I think the next one would lead to a suspension. And me and Sharpie went to the draw, and we were both young, and we looked at each other and we're like, we're fighting, right? And then if you look at the clip, both our heads are down, and it's just like throwing punches stupidly. But it was one of those moments where, like, you looked around, I'm like, I am not going to be the only guy not fighting here tonight. Like, I want to be part of this. This is really cool what's going on. And I remember the scene in the room was like, we got blown out, but it was kind of a rallying point for us. Like, we were like, all right, we can stand up to anyone, you know?
Yeah, and there wouldn't be a worse feeling than being that one or two guys that just didn't go that night, right? Like, you're sitting there, and the old school like train of thought with coaches especially was like, you better step up and do this, otherwise you look like a chicken shit, right? So it was a no-brainer that you went out there and fought. Anyway.
Yeah, I actually my first few years in the league, I tried to fight like at least once a year, because it was kind of like acceptance in the group, you know? Like, you just wanted to show that you had the stones 100%. To kind of show up. Yeah, I remember Rob Ray telling me, like, it doesn't matter if you fight or it doesn't matter if you get beat up. It's if you just show up to fight. So I always took that to heart, that it shows your teammates that you care.
I think that was all over Martin Havlat and Ken Hitchcock saying Martin Havlat would get fed his lunch. I believe that's the game that started that. You played for Hitch. You both played for Hitch. You've also played for a few others. Let's call them old school coaches, Jacques, Mike Babcock, Lindy Ruff. I'm curious if that style of coaching still works in today's NHL.
I think there's a place for it. I think it all depends on your team. There's different locker rooms, and different teams need different things. And I'm not sure. It's a very broad question. So it's unfair to kind of judge everybody in that under the same ilk. But I think there's a place for everyone in hockey, as long as it fits the organization and what you're trying to do. So I don't know.
Spez, I'll reconfigure the question. Is it fair to tear a strip off a young guy on the bench in front of the whole team?
I think so. Like, I don't know. Like,
I know. I don't care. You and I are immune to that. But I know a lot of players now probably wouldn't really deal well with that. And I know, like, Hitch would do that to motivate you, right? Like, he'd call you out and hope that you bark back at him to get you going. And I feel like they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I think every player is differently. I think I'd rather be barked at than get silent treatment. I think as a player, maybe that's just me kind of coming up in that type of system. I am big on just transparency. Like, if I'm playing bad, I want to know I'm playing bad. If I'm playing, if I don't want to be guessing. So you don't want to be, talk to the coach and he's been like, you've been terrible for a week. And you're like, well, why haven't you talked to me about it? So I think that's probably the most important thing. I think there is still a place for trying to spark guys on the bench, because I think that 60 minutes in a game, you have to push different buttons on different nights to get your team to win. So there is a place for it still. I don't buy into the fact there's no place for it. But I do think that there has to be follow-up conversations and reasons behind it. And because guys now are looking for the why. Like, why did this happen? Why am I getting yelled at? So I don't think the answer is to, not treat everybody with kid gloves. I think the answer is just to be a good communicator after the fact and leading up to it.
Have you ever been on the bench and a coach is, let's say, ripping into another player, but it's actually quite funny? Like Brian Murray was pretty sarcastic and dry-witted, that you're trying not to laugh at the guy that's because the comment is so good?
Yeah, well, there's like the Brian Murray, Lindy Ruff would have some good, kind of quips like that. There's definitely times you laugh. You know when it's serious, though. You don't laugh when it's serious, even if it's funny, because you've been in that guy's place. So even if it's funny but it's serious, you don't laugh. But there's times when they're looking to kind of play the crowd a little bit. So there's no doubt those guys are sharp-witted. They've been around the league for a long time. They want to get a laugh sometimes out of you.
Sheldon Keefe the other night was very upset over a call, got a bench minor. Is that as mad as you've seen him, or does he have more of a temper that we don't see sometimes?
No, I've seen him more mad. He runs hot. He's an emotional guy. He's very passionate, excellent communicator, very good coach in terms of, really knowing how to talk to guys. But no, he runs hot. He's a passionate guy. And I think that comes through in our play as a team. But maybe everybody doesn't see it as much, but no, he pushes us and he drives us, and he's not a complacent coach. That's for sure.
You are a Toronto native. You were playing on a team that's considered a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. Can you imagine, or have you thought about winning a Stanley Cup in your hometown and what it would mean to Toronto?
Yeah, for sure. It's a special opportunity. We have a team that's, very good, that has a chance to win, and with lots of expectations, but it's a great place to be in, because, with expectations, it means that the results have to follow. So it's a great opportunity. Being from Toronto, I think it makes it more special for me, just because I got all my family around. My kids are settled in school here. It's allowed me to kind of start my life for my kids and wife, whereas, I can continue to play hockey and have this great opportunity. You
are under 50 points away from scoring 1,000 NHL points. Only 90 players have done that. Do you, obviously it's something you look towards, but is it a realistic goal for you now, and the thoughts of you being able to be included in that group?
No, to be honest, not at all. If it was, I would maybe go to a team where I would have a bigger role and try to chase something like that. I'm here just to win. I'm here to be a good member of our team, to fill holes when we get injuries, to be a solid contributor on that fourth line, and be good on both sides of special teams. The points are not really a focus. I've had some offensive success here early in the season, but it's not my focus at all anymore. If I get there, great. That shows that I probably had longevity, because I'll have to play a little more time to get there. But no, that's not my focus. If it was, I'd be somewhere else.
Okay, let's go back to you playing in the beginning of your NHL career. So guys who are drafted today, let's say top 5, are generally considered to be playing in the NHL right away. They don't usually spend a lot in the minors. We know that you went through a pretty public debate, if you will, of going up and down. Do you think players should start to still develop in the minors, or are you okay with the way the game is today that they play right away in the NHL?
I think it all depends on the situation. I think I was really upset not to make the team right away. I'd probably never been cut from a team in my life at that point, and had high expectations. And then you look around your peer group and you see other guys having success, and you want to be those guys. And even my first couple of years in the league were difficult in terms of, you play a limited role and you kind of are finding your way. And I felt like, you're trying to figure out what you're going to be in the NHL. So that was tough, even when I was up and down. But I think the year that really helped me was the year in Binghamton during the lockout. I got to kind of just be the top guy there. I got to find my game again. John Paddock worked with me tirelessly. Like, I owe John Paddock a ton, because he worked with me every day. He was on me. He would do video with me before video was how it is now. And that year I took a step, and I got the NHL the next year, and I was like, all right, I know what I am as a player. I know what I have to be. So I think every situation is different. I think teams right now that think they can just go all young and it's going to work and everyone's going to flourish together, I think you have to have a culture around it. So I don't know if it's the right play just to plug guys in. I just know my personal thing was, it was tough at first, and then I had that whole year, and the whole year without the expectations of getting called up really helped me.
Meth, what's it like for you then for the AHL?
Well, he touched on literally everything. I was gonna say the same thing. For me, and Spez is right. The difference between players and the individual is everything, right? Like for a stay-at-home D-man like myself, I needed at least 2 years down there, and I didn't have the same expectation level that Spez had. I needed to develop, learn how to grow on my own down there and get bigger and stronger. Whereas a skilled guy might be able to jump in right away right now. And I think I really liked what he said about having veterans incorporated, along your lineup. You can't just have a bunch of young kids running the show. It doesn't work that way. You have to have some good vets to learn off of, to see the habits, which leads me into my next comment about Spez. Spez is a guy that was always the first guy at the rink. I'm sure he still is, or generally close to it. He's got a heat pack on his back. He's doing sticks for 3 hours. And then after practice, he's there for another 2 hours doing sticks again, working on his equipment, tinkering. That's how you learn as a young guy, right? Because when I first got to the Sens, I was out of there right away. And then finally I learned from Spez and Alfie. They were staying on the ice and working on stuff, or they were working on their sticks. And I started to develop that a little bit too. So I really like the comments he made, though. It's good for young kids to hear that.
Do you still work on your sticks that much? Like, and by the way, do you have any wood sticks left?
Oh, I got lots of wood sticks. I got lots in my garage. It's littered with them because at one point I wanted to go back to them, but I couldn't get things right. The wood stick to graphite, I swear it ruined a year of my life. Like I was so upset about not having to switch from wood sticks. I remember meeting a good friend downtown on the street in Bank Street because I had given him a dozen wood sticks. This is a true story. I had given him a dozen wood sticks and I was struggling using the composite sticks. And I had called him and said, "Hey, do you still have any of those sticks left?" And he said, "I do. I got 6 left." I said, "This is on a game day." And I said, "Can I meet you downtown and grab them?" So I drove down after morning skate. I grabbed the sticks from him. I came back to the rink. I got them all ready. And I went out and I scored against Columbus like early in the game. And I was in like a 10-game drought. And I think that made me even worse because then I was like, I really need these sticks. And the kicker is he autographed the sticks. And I taped over where he autographed as a joke because he wanted to make sure that he was like playing the game with me. So it was that's how crazy I am about my sticks. So that's just a little tidbit for you.
Because you used to have like a narrow tape, I think, on the end of your stick, right? Did you have to tape the whole blade because of it? Like, where did he sign it?
No, I only taped now I tape probably the last 2/3 of the stick. But I used to only tape probably like a third of the toe before. So yeah, I covered up where he signed it.
I think you tried to get manufacturers. Like I remember you panicking about this. Did you try to go to different guys to make these wood sticks?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we tried to get the machines that Sherwood was using at the time to make sticks, and it wouldn't fly. Whatever. It's a part of my life that I wish I could just forget because I was really stressed about it and did not like the switch.
But it's real. Like don't even have a fraction of Spez's ability. And when Easton switched over, wasn't Easton? Yeah, when Easton switched over when I was with the Sens, I felt it. Like it was a nightmare for like a couple weeks. It felt like I couldn't make a pass or make a play or even shoot. And I feel like it was just the manufacturers and how they, adjust however they're making the stick. So I can understand, like it can be a nightmare.
It sounds crazy. Like it sounds crazy for people to hear probably, but I've heard baseball players are the same, announce here, announce there on their bats. The reality is that like I'm a feel guy and you use your stuff every single day. So if it's off a little bit, you feel off. So, there does become an obsession. There does become an obsession with it a little bit. So, I think it's all personal. Some guys, I remember Chris Phillips used to have the trainers cut his stick, or they would come the right length. He'd tape it up and play, and it wouldn't be a problem. So everyone's a little different.
Well, remember Alfie and his skates? We had him on there.
Alfie had Kells breaking the skates in for him, and he wore like 30 pairs the one year, and his back was bugging him, and it does impact you though. Like it does.
Yeah, totally.
That was Kells's claim to fame, I guess.
But you're like a hockey savant. I remember, and I don't know if it's Kelly, but it was somebody young who came in and you either told them to shorten the knob of his stick like an inch. You're like, it's too long. You got to cut it down an inch. Do you do that to a lot of guys? Do you sense that stuff?
Yeah, I try not to get too involved with guys, but there's definitely, if you see something on someone, I'm big on like your lie and like how your stick sits and having enough blade on the ice and depending on how you play. So I've definitely been known to give a few pointers. I try to not get in guys' heads too much, but every once in a while it helps to give a guy a tip for sure.
Okay, who's did you have the biggest impact on?
Oh, I don't know. That's a tough question. I don't know. Be hard to say. You'd have to ask the guys. I don't know.
You should just claim Danny Heatley's 50-goal seasons and say I completely did something there.
No. We were together doing that. That was goal. I feel just as accomplished. I feel like I was a part of those 50-goal seasons. It was that was special.
Okay, speaking of that 50-goal, those 2-goal seasons, can you explain now, going back and looking at it, what it was like to play on that line with Alfredsson, Heatley, and you?
Yeah, it was incredible. It was we had a great relationship, the three of us. We talked the same language hockey wise. We had, it was chemistry from day one. And I think that when you have that, it makes it really fun to play. It gets you excited to come to the rink. For Alfie, he became more of a shooter, I think, when he played with me. And he just wanted to shoot pucks all the time. He got himself open. He was one of the best at finding those soft spots, similar to how like a Brett Hall does it and Luke Robitaille and these guys, they find the dead areas in the offensive zone. But yeah, it was special. And I learned a lot from Alfie and Heater during that time. And we pushed each other. That's the thing that people probably don't know is there was lots of times where we had arguments on the bench, arguments in the dressing room, and we would confront each other and we pushed each other all the time. And it was a great relationship. It was fun.
What are those arguments like?
They're always open and I'm never passing to them. And all I did was pass the puck. So that's usually how it started. Somebody was open and I would kind of ask them, if you think that I really didn't see you, like somewhere along those lines.
Did you guys go like days without talking to each other, or was it over?
No. It was like argue, have a beer together after. Like it was like it was a great relationship. We had great chemistry.
It's awesome. People don't realize that, Like they don't see it because, Spez, you're around. Eric and I would do it all the time. When we were playing together, he'd be giving it to me on the bench right after, and it was a stupid play, right? And I didn't give it to him on the point or something. Like I didn't thread a pass through 3 forwards to get it to him. And we'd go at it for like, I don't know, the rest of the game. And then after the game, we'd kind of laugh about it. It's like, that's the kind of shit people don't see.
And I actually believe that when your rooms can have that and sustain it and it's okay, that's when you know you have something special going, because it's when guys don't feel comfortable talking to each other that you worry about your group and why they don't want to talk to each other. So I think that if you can confront each other, I think it makes for a really healthy locker room.
You're so smart with the NHL. And I know that you used to tell me like, well, that guy shoots right and that guy shoots left. And I'd have no idea that you knew all this. So is there a career for Jason Spezza in hockey somewhere after, whether it's coach, management?
I hope so. I think I only know one thing well, and that's hockey. So I don't really plan on venturing into other things. My wife tells me all the time that I don't really do anything else well. So I might as well stick to hockey. But no, I hope that there's a career for me afterwards. I don't know what it is. I'm just really focused on playing and getting the most out of my playing career. But I definitely have a passion for the game and want to keep working in it. So I'm sure something will work out.
Spez, you don't want to coach minor hockey?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's kind of the route I'm going to head down, but we'll see. My girls don't even play. They don't even like to watch them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That was why I was asking. I should have known better. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
My girls check the box scores just to see if Dad's going to be in a good mood or not if we won.
Yeah.
So that's about the extent I get.
Yeah. So do they wear the Spezza Leaf jersey around the house?
No, the little one's into the jerseys a little bit. Like she'll still wear like a Dallas jersey, or we're friends with the Roussells, so she wears a Canucks Roussel jersey. And the little one, she likes having like personal connections to the guys. So the little one will wear a little bit, but the older ones, they're too cool to put on a jersey.
Yeah, they don't care anymore.
They don't want. Yeah, dad's not really a big deal. They want to talk about other things, and it's actually great. Like it really keeps you balanced that way. My girls are awesome. They're so much fun to be around.
And it would have been fun during COVID, obviously, to be home with them all the time. Did you have a COVID outfit? Like Meth wears the same outfit all day for like 3 straight days. I'm just curious, like, did you have a COVID outfit?
I don't think I've taken Nike sweats off for about a year. I put a suit on to go to the game, and then I'm locked into track pants. It's actually it's funny that I'm a grown man with 4 kids that wear sweats every day. So I can't remember the last time I put a pair of jeans on.
Okay, now the internet sensation question that we keep asking all our guests: do you have a favorite cheat snack, and what is it?
Favorite cheat snack? I would say like pizza. Pizza is probably my favorite cheat thing to have. Like if there's a couple days in between games or feeling like I need a little bit of comfort food, I'll order pizza. In terms of snack, I like ice cream, but I avoid it. So that's not really in my wheelhouse anymore. Maybe some like chips and guac, like something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
See, that's much better. Yeah, I didn't know if you could come up with like goji berries. I was a little concerned.
No, I'm not that.
Let's go. A quick question. I remember going to your house one time to do the story on the Buffalo Burgers. How long did the Buffalo Burgers remain in the diet?
A long time. Like still
Really?
to this day, I eat game meat. I really like game meat. Our trainer here hunts, so I get fresh stuff from him. I've always liked game meat. Everywhere I go, I try to find. When I was in Dallas, I found a butcher that made game meats. So yeah, I've kept it in the whole time.
Oh, interesting. Are you the cook in the house?
No, I'm not. Jen's a really good cook, so I leave that up to her.
Appreciate your time, Jason, and good luck the rest of the season. And I hope it all works out for you with a good playoff run here.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Good to see you. Good luck with the show.
Thanks, James.
All right, joining us now is Sportsnet reporter, Hockey Night in Canada host, and arguably the best head of hair in all of broadcasting, Kyle Bukauskas. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. I was excited to get the call, and I knew this was for real last night when I got the follow back on Twitter from Mark Methot. When I saw that, I thought, "Oh baby, it's on now. This is for real."
And I just followed you today on Instagram too, because I'm like, I wonder what he's up to, because I had to think of some questions. Wally usually drives these interviews, right? So it didn't give me much though. Judging by you live a very
I was going to
similar
say, you
lifestyle
probably
to mine.
yeah, it was a huge mistake on your part. So my apologies.
Probably
Okay.
doing it just to troll you by the end of it. All right.
Yeah.
I want to bring you on to talk about the art of the post-game interview, because it's not as simple as perhaps it looks on television, even though you may make it seem that way. And we'll go back to maybe the March 14th Joey Daccord post-game interview. He gets his first NHL win. Going into that interview, though, as from all the experience I've ever had, you have no idea how this is going to play out, correct?
Kinda. This was a little bit different. Let me just say, I mean, we're not exactly doing open heart surgery here, but I will say what stuck out in my mind a few weeks before that, when he made his first start in Montreal at the Bell Center, they lost. And even in his post-game like Zoom call, he got emotional just talking about playing in that building in the NHL for the first time, in a loss, mind you, just because of the fact that his dad was from there and what, that the history of that franchise meant to his family and his grandfather. And watching that alone, like selfishly, I thought, boy, it would really be cool to be working the game where he gets his first win in the NHL, because there was just, if he was getting emotional talking about that, you can only imagine how he would be feeling and what would be running through his mind, when he gets his first win at that level. And so for it to happen in the most unusual of circumstances, where he's told midway through warm-up that he's getting the start and he ends up winning, it all added to the emotion of that. So because of what happened there a few weeks prior in Montreal, I had a feeling that there was obviously going to be some real raw emotion on top of what you would already be feeling as an athlete, getting your first ever win in that spot. So that's kind of why I went into it the way I did, and just let him kind of let it all out right off the hop. And obviously you never know for sure how those things are going to go, but for me in that spot, like, they're not tuning in to hear what I have to say. It's obviously the star of the game, and to give him an opportunity to share his thoughts on was obviously a really special moment for him.
And that's the thing, right? Like, we don't ever want to become part of the interview, but we need to drive that interview. And to get one that's emotional becomes rare. We almost consider them like Loch Ness monsters, because you never really get them, maybe 1 in 100. And so that's what makes them so special. I think of, going back to the Bobby Ryan one for me will always be one that I remember, because these are so rare to have happen.
Right. And so they're not going to happen all the time. And sometimes it's a little more just kind of nuts and bolts thoughts on the game and a little more hockey driven. But I think that's kind of what drives, people in my position. And obviously, when you've done them in the past, Wally, is just, trying to get whatever it can. It doesn't always have to be emotion, just maybe a little bit of an extra thought and curiosity and some engagement from whoever your interview subject is. And so it helps obviously having a bit of an understanding of maybe the player's personality, some that's a little more thoughtful, some that's a little more detail orientated when it comes to how they process the game, and maybe you can get into the little more minutia at times of maybe what just transpired over the course of the game, or maybe some guys a little more playful and you kind of want to go down that road, when the timing is right. And obviously, when you understand that you're in a situation that could be more emotional than others, just, making sure that, you're doing your job just to allow your subject to speak their mind and allow them to get whatever they're feeling across in the best way possible in that moment.
I wanted to ask you a quick question on that. I know Wally already kind of touched on it. When you guys have, as we all know, it's not a secret with athletes. Not all the answers are always going to be very complex. You get a very dry interview occasionally. And I think Wally kind of touched on it when he mentioned you don't maybe have all your questions preset. How do you deal with that when you get a guy that's giving you those quick, like 2 or 3 word generic answers, and you have to go through like a Rolodex of questions just to get through an interview and make it interesting?
Yeah, well, Matt, I'll tell you, that's something I still struggle with, right? When you think you're going to get something out of somebody and then, you end up getting something completely different, and then you're backpedaling, right? In your mind, you're almost trying to keep your head above water as you go through the rest of it. But I guess obviously, preparation goes into that, and just always having, an extra question ready in case, things are going a bit quicker than you initially anticipated. And the one thing that I still work on and struggle with at times is, I know it sounds simple, but just listening to what they're saying and trying to pick something out of the answer that you can maybe that would promote a follow-up there. Like, so I don't know, Mark. I mean, I remember when I first moved to Ottawa, I was told, this was back in 2014, like if you wanted an honest answer from a player on how the team was playing or how their own game was going, you went to Mark Methot. So how did you always approach those situations? You were always one of the guys that you knew if you were going to ask a question, good or bad, you were getting an honest answer.
It's weird because some guys have, first of all, thank you, but some players have very good personality in general around the locker room and then freeze up in the camera. So I'll watch some post-game interviews with you guys, and you guys are all pros, but they just don't express themselves properly. And I don't know if it's nerves or what it is, but when I would do it, I never really even thought about it, right? I get up there and I just speak on it. And it's not like you're speaking in front of a physical crowd, right? So the nerves are much different when you're just in front of a camera. And you guys, when you drive the interview, it's just easier if you've got a good personality and you seem friendly. But I do find it distracting when a reporter's kind of looking at you and they're not really listening, but they're just kind of looking at you and going, and they're kind of cutting you off mid-interview. I hated that.
Right.
That drove me nuts as a player. But yeah, there's no trick to it. I think some guys just have a little more personality and some guys are a little less nervous. Hey, Wally, I don't know what you could speak on that.
Well, one of the problems is when you have that deer in the headlights kind of look where you're just kind of staring at the guy, is because the producer's in your ear talking to you like, hey, why don't you ask him this? Or we've got 30 seconds, or do you have 2 more questions, or we can go 1 more, or whatever. And you're like, I am trying to listen to this guy tell me what's going on while I got this other guy yapping in my ear. And so that's where it becomes difficult for us. But I do agree with Kyle. Like, you're trying to listen as best you can, because and I never had questions prepared. It's probably very evident in the way I did my interviews, but coming off the ice, if it's an in-game interview, you're going to ask about the period or how it went or your goal or whatever. But beyond that, you don't know where that interview is going to go. So you got to judge the guy coming off. He may have just had a penalty. He could have been in a fight. He could have just gotten yelled at by his coach. He could have not played for the last 6 minutes. All that stuff's going on. So you got to try and manage that at the same time, trying to make it, again, and focus on the game itself. Like, I will say that the in-game interviews and the over the boards and at the beginning of the game, the most stressful 40-second interview I will ever have in my life, because I stress so much on how do you ask the right question when you make sure that guy's in the right mood. And so this is where you got to know the players, right? You got to know who's a good talker, who is okay. They'll talk when the team is losing, who's okay to say certain things. That's where that becomes the real professional part of knowing who your subject is.
Kyle,
And
do
it's
you guys
good-
do you guys normally just like feel a player out by just asking them like, hey, what's going on, like prior before
Yep.
the camera's rolling? Is that not a cue for you guys that lets you know?
Totally.
You know, like, yeah. Anyway.
It's the body language when, I mean, back when, you know, you do the interview standing side by side, the body language that they'd have when they came to you. And usually it was, hey, thanks for doing this. And whatever that response was to that usually gave you a pretty good indication of how
fair enough.
the interview was going to go. And the pregame warm-up ones are tough too, because I can only imagine, like, Mark, for you as a player, your mind's buzzing, you're trying to get into the right zone and just go through your routine in those precious minutes before the game starts. And now you've got to do an interview. So I always try to, at least in those moments, whatever my questions were, make them quick. So you're not dragging on for 18, 20 seconds about whatever you want to ask the guy and let the player get to it. Actually, I remember in the playoffs in 2017, when you guys played the Rangers in the second round, there was a game in Madison Square Garden. And you were my pregame interview during warmups. And we also had another interview with the Rangers. And so as it works, you know, usually in that time you would do the home team interview first and then the visiting team. So I don't know if it was gamesmanship or the person, you know, legitimately forgot, but I'm standing there on the Rangers bench at MSG waiting until like the PR finally had to come over and bring them over. And then I'm running over to your side and you're looking at me going, where the hell you been? I'm like, I'm so sorry. Because I know you just want to do your thing, and I'm like, I would have been here earlier if I could. But
I think as a player, it just, the very beginning is ideal because we're just doing a little bit of a skate around for people that go to games and see the pregame warmups. But as it progresses and we start doing our line rushes, those are things we don't want to miss out on, right? So I'd be passing back and forth with Eric and we do our little routine, but because you'd come in late, then I'm all rattled because I'm missing in. And so, yeah, I get that, but I can also realize that that's incredibly stressful for you. So it's kind of like I think it's an awareness thing as a player too, right?
I've had guys forget. And so I can so you do
you're just
yellow
waving
senator side, and then you're supposed to go over to the other side. And I can remember like yelling at guys. I want to say there was a Vancouver guy one time, but they come over and some of them are sheepishly apologizing because they think, you know, they totally forgot and they just get in that zone and they just totally forget everything else that's going on. So I appreciate that. But I will say, when you talk about the players coming off the ice and trying to get in, you know, just to give them a moment to get a breather, one, you just want them to catch their breath. But I would always take the towel, and it's not as nice as the nice Hockey Night in Canada towel, but the Sport Check towel. And I would always be the one to put it over the player just so I could have a second just to try and just let them forget about what's going on and get their head out of that game mode and into just being in an interview spot or somewhere else different, because you got to get them out of that game setting. So that always became the interesting part of just trying to laugh or joke. And you know, certain personalities you can joke with, like Mark Borvietsky come off the ice, you could always joke about something with him, and so he'd be fine. But other guys are like, nope. Or the other guys, it's got to go take Kyle Turris had to always take his skates off, so you'd have to wait. Those guys are always good too. Like, where are you? Where are you coming?
And you started to figure it out after a while, which guys took a bit longer than the others, and it was all fine in the end. But Brent, you would actually physically be the one putting the towel on?
Yeah. I was like, because the other, and so sometimes it's a person that just is nervous, or they're just starting out in broadcast. They're just some TVA helper if for the most part. And I'm like, no, just give me the towel. I will do it. So that way they know that there's kind of a for lack of a better term, a connection there, just to try and get their headspace around not playing the game. It's total distraction. Absolutely.
Sounds like
I do remember
micromanaging.
if you're on the road, there is no in-game reporter. And so they do it on headset. So they get the local TV guys to put the crew to put the towels on. And we used to only be able to do it in the first intermission. Sport Check didn't pay for the second intermission, or however it worked out. But they didn't know that, and they only had one towel. So I can remember seeing one of the times a player walking away, and I just see this hand grabbing the towel and yanking it off the player. They're like, no, you can keep the towel. It's okay. Yeah, there's good stuff. Who's that, Kyle? Who's your favorite interview, post-game or in-game that you've done?
Ooh, that's a good question. Aside from Brad Marchand, who is up there, I would say, you know what, actually, and then in that same playoff run that I was just referencing, like I did 2 rounds there with the Rangers, you know, against Montreal and then against Ottawa. Having Hank Lundqvist at the end of a game, like just bare his soul to you after just leaving everything out on the ice and the way he played, and him to, you know, for him to speak on what just happened in those moments, that always stuck out to me. He was a favorite for sure.
That I can remember. I had Craig Anderson one time that Sens set it up. That Craig did a pregame over the boards interview. Now, goalies never talk, right? And so they don't talk game days usually, but Craig is in warm up and he's coming over to do one of those. I'll never forget that one. But my favorite, I think, for me is at the World Championships in 2009, I think it is. Colby Armstrong is on the team, and we do an over the boards. And at the very end, he goes, "Thanks, Wally," and he skates away. And he comes back and goes, "Did you like that?" And I was like, "Yeah," because it was the first time anybody ever called me Wally on television. So I'll always remember this interview of Colby Armstrong calling me Wally on television. Yeah.
Kyle, do you ever, I got a random question here for you, just because I
Okay.
think I can relate. When I first came into the league, one of the biggest challenges for me was just getting over that intimidation factor, right? So I'd be out there my first year playing against Lidstrom in Detroit. And like, that's all I could think about was like, I used to idolize this guy years prior. So did you ever have that, like making that transition into the NHL and being maybe starstruck by a couple different players?
Players, not so much, because I guess, I don't know, I'd kind of trained myself to think that way of, just seeing them as people, because I think if you put them up on a pedestal, then I don't think you get that same connection when you're trying to talk to them in an interview setting. But I mean, certainly the first time, you interview Sid, it was like, wow, that was really cool. But it was more so like the first time I saw Joe Sakic walking around, and obviously, he was long retired.
Yeah.
The time that happened, that was like, oh wow, like that's Joe Sakic over there. But even in just other guys in the business, right? Like, meeting Brent for the first time, as crazy as that sounds, I was like, oh wow, that was a big deal. And when I first moved to Toronto, I mean, I was 20 at the time when I first started working at Sportsnet, and so now you're in the Leafs locker room, shoulder to shoulder with reporters that you grew up watching on TV or listening to over your childhood. Like that was a big deal. And so to get comfortable enough to be like, I'm going to ask a question here, it took a bit of time, because you just feel like, who am I to speak up at this time initially?
Yeah, those player scrums in the locker room can get pretty violent. I don't want to say violent, but it's aggressive, right? Especially when you're in those big markets like Montreal and Toronto. It's just a swarm, and certainly in the playoff time. So I guess you guys are like bumping elbows just to get a question in there, right? When you're around all those other people. That's
There
cool.
have been fights. There have been fights. And so I'll always remember the one in Montreal years ago with Louis Jean and Rob Martyr, I think it was called. I may have his name wrong now, but like they started grabbing each other's tie and whatnot. And I think it was Valerie Bure or Mark. They're standing, Saku Koivu, they're standing up on the stalls to look in to see what's going on. Oh yeah. The whole room came to a complete and utter quiet silence watching these two. So there have been scraps.
Yeah. And then also too, like on the flip side of that, Brent, like say if you're covering a playoff series and like you're talking to some player in the room, and then you see someone else come, but you're at the other side of the room. So it takes you a bit to get there. And by the time you're there, like the massive scrum is already formed. And then you've got like the microphone on the extender, and you're trying to do like the awkward, slide it by three people's faces and stuff. And you're like, I'm so sorry. I just got to sneak in here. Like, it's just the the stress of it all. I mean, it's funny to talk about, but
you can't go. And so now most teams have a logo in the middle of the room. You can't go in the middle of the room. So now you're trying to go around. People are running. There's camera guys who can only see out one side of their head because they have a camera. They bumping into people. Like, it's chaos, especially.
It's a hazard zone in there. No question. Yeah, you bet.
It is. Yeah. I've seen a couple of guys eat some cameras when they spin them around. So it is interesting to follow that dynamic though, in a room of watching how the media operates. But that's where relationships come in. Like, if Kyle needed to come into a scrum and I was there, we would always slide over, right? Or he'd do the same for me, or we'd hold each other mic. But if there's a guy that's really annoyed you and pissed you off, you're like, there's no chance I'm moving for you, tough guy. So I've had a few of those, especially people who want to get really close and not back up to give everybody else a chance to get in there. They just sit there, and then you're like, you'll get yours someday eventually, hopefully.
Yeah, I've seen that in action. Yeah, it is an art form, Wally.
It's certainly like, I wish there could be a reality show of watching post-game interviews in the locker room if that ever happens again, and the nonsense that takes place.
You guys are forgetting the other element too. As a player, if I'm sitting beside like Erik Karlsson or another guy that always gets the media, and I'm his like stallmate next door, we would like, well, actually Nealer did this. Chris Neal always did this. He put up tape like bordering on the outside of his perimeter so that reporters were not allowed to cross over. And when they did, he would straight up call them out on, say, get out of here, like, get out of here. So you guys had no room on one side. So it's just straight down like 10 feet narrow because you're not allowed in our space,
because he was next to Alfie for the most, like he might be one stall over from Alfie, and so it was just jammed. And was it just tape? He put a skate lace down.
Yeah.
So if you stepped into, he would stick tape on the back of your pant leg, or he'd undo your shoe
as the
lace.
Player, it was so uncomfortable. Like I'd be watching like across the room, and I'd be looking. I'd be like, oh man, like it was cringy almost because I felt bad for you guys,
Right.
It was.
Well, I would feel bad too, because you're like, yeah, I mean, the guy's got to be able to get in and get his
just
gear
doing your
off.
job. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're in your space, right? So I've always tried to be mindful of that too.
Well, I've seen, like I've watched guys step on people's skates, like just they're stepping on locker stalls to try and get in. It's just nonsense.
Yeah, standing up on like the
disrespect.
bench and getting the
Yes.
that's a little too much.
Well, that's why you guys should be doing them in the hallway or like in a designated area, no? Or is that just not the same? I'm sure you have an answer for that.
But the NHL rules dictate that you have to be in the room so that players can't necessarily hide on you. That's one of the things. I mean, the Sens used to
right now, mind you, but
yeah. But the Sens used to, like we would do the interviews in the weight room on bikes, and so Alexi Yashin would just be giving it to you, and like Alexi, 4 points tonight. That was good 60 minutes.
I remember those.
Yeah, me too.
Stop this nonsense. Yeah, luckily, and so you're trying to get guys around bikes and cameras and like it was just absolute chaos. That was the worst. That was chaos at an all-time high. But luckily, we got rid of that, and we don't have to go in the weight rooms anymore. But yeah, you just think back of all the crazy stuff that's happened in scrums. Anyway,
good times, man. Hopefully we get back to that sometime.
Yes. Yeah. It's much better than the Zooms. I'll take anything in a locker room now, but that's for sure. Kyle, always a great chat with you. Appreciate your time. Look forward to more of your in-game and post-game interviews on Hockey Night somewhere soon.
All right. Loving the show, boys. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right. Welcome back to the show. As always, joined now by producer Craig, although you need a nickname like the Wizard or whatever. We're gonna have to come up with something that's completely unique to you.
Okay. Yeah. People have been trying to give me nicknames for years, and it just never sticks. People end up just calling me Craig. So it's been working out great so far in my entire life. But if you guys want to crack the code, I think give it a shot.
Okay, you're gonna need a nickname. Like Sidney Crosby gets called Daryl, or there's Jimmy Stu. Like we're gonna have to come up with something that's completely unique for you.
Just a different first name.
Yeah, basically.
I think it's good. Sure. Right. What do I look like? Do I look like a Craig or something else?
No, not a Craig. No.
You look like he looks like a Dan or something very generic and boring.
Okay. Now we've just offended all the Dans. Okay. Yeah. Send all your complaints to @MarkMethod3.
I'm joking.
On Twitter.
Yeah.
All right. Just as a reminder, thank you very much to Jason Spezza and of course Kyle Bukauskas for stopping by. Our next show comes your way on Thursday, and our guest, I'm not going to give you the name, but it's a guy that always wanted to fight Meth almost every shift of every time they faced each other on the ice. That's
so
right.
Hundreds of people. It could be hundreds of people.
Yeah, that doesn't narrow it down very much. Yeah. But click like and subscribe and watch our YouTube channel because that's where the most exciting parts are. And of course, we're also available on podcast platforms like Apple, Google, and Spotify. All right, Craig, time now for a little trivial trivia.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we had Eric Carlson on recently, and the question was, why does he wear number 65? A question a lot of us didn't know the answer to, but it ended up being a very simple reason because that was the year his parents were born. And shout out to Trevor, aka @Trev_Mahoney, who correctly identified that on our Twitter feed. And we're going to be getting in touch with you, and we're going to send you something pretty sweet from signed by Mark Methot. But that brings us to today's question, and we'll bring up the little board thingy. How many wood sticks did Jason Spezza get back from his buddy's trunk? The nice little story he told about having to zip down to Bank Street. If you caught that in our earlier interview, hit us with your answer on Twitter using the hashtag Wally and Methot, and we will reveal the winner on next Thursday's show.
Oh, before we go, we just asked earlier in the show who Meth's favorite player was growing up, and he told us a sob story about Ray Bourque. Who's your favorite player?
Yeah, I'm like Meth a little bit too, as I was born before the team was here. And I was born in I picked a favorite team before the Sens would even have been philosophized to come back. So I grew up a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, and it was because of Mario Lemieux. When I was 5 years old, that was the '87 Rendezvous, where him and Lemieux teamed up, and everyone was talking about how amazing Wayne Gretzky was, but I was watching the guy who scored every goal, which was Mario Lemieux, and it just stuck ever since. And so it was kind of fun. Pittsburgh was terrible back then, so I kind of had the fun of watching a bad team get better and win a Stanley Cup. But over the years, right, it's the same thing happens with Meth. You just start if there's a hockey team just down the street, you start following them more, and playoff runs and showing up to games in shorts in June, like that stuff's unreal. So over time, you start kind of losing those childhood things, like just like you're not an Islanders fan anymore, right? Like it's maybe there a little bit, you have a soft spot in your heart for them, but you grow up. And actually, I grew to extremely dislike the Pittsburgh Penguins as an adult, largely because of my interactions with the Ottawa Senators. So it was a lot of fun. But my childhood Craig and adult Craig would have disagreements on maybe which team is preferential.
Seeing that the Islanders are maybe a legit Stanley Cup contender, I might just jump back on the bandwagon right now. So I'm all in on the Islanders for this season. Yeah. Go Islanders, win the Stanley Cup. Is that fair?
I guess. Yeah. I mean, listen, there's nothing better than a little casual fandom in your life. And if sometimes you accidentally like a team that starts to do well, that's not a bad thing to fund and follow along. So I mean, I'd like to see the Ottawa Senators win a Stanley Cup. I have a feeling it's probably not going to be this season, but that's okay. Things are going in the right direction. So if you can find little fun things to cheer for, former players that have gone on, as Jean-Gabriel Pageau getting to put on an Islanders jersey, maybe take them in the playoffs, score a couple goals against some of these teams we also don't like. Baxter chiming in from the sidelines.
Baxter is all in on the Islanders and Jean-Gabriel Pageau. All right, well, we'll get Pager on the show maybe soon. Have a little chat with him. But for now, that'll wrap up this edition of the Wally and Methot Show. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. See you, Meth.
See ya. All bullshit aside, we'll get out for sure because I don't have anyone to do it with, so it'd be fun.
Didn't even ask me.
Great.
Well, you don't bike. What do you do? What do you do?
What do you do?
What do you mean?
We got to figure out like what Brent's deal is.